changes to the agenda?
There is not.
I look for a motion to adopt the agenda.
Also move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then adopted. Okay, I guess the number 4, you want to request for sign variances?
Did you do the minutes? too?
Oops. Oh, so yeah, I'm looking for approve the October 22nd minutes.
So move.
I'll second it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I'm
These
sorry, you
approved?
guys were too quick on the adoption of the agenda. Who motioned and who seconded the adoption?
I made the
You
motion.
need the motion.
That was for the minutes,
Oh,
but the first one.
First
Oh.
is Donna.
I made
Donna?
the motion.
I second it.
Doug.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry.
Yep.
Got second one?
We're all good to go. Number 4.
Hey, you want to take that one? Request for sign variances?
Yeah, either that or Mark, I can jump in.
do you have the GIS? Okay.
So, we have a representative from the Valley Family Medicine. Ryan Van, I'm sorry, last name?
Van Hoosen.
Van Hoosen, is here, is making a request for some signage, additional signage at his property. This is on the corner of Mill Street, and you can see, and you had this in your packet, there is an existing sign on the corner. And what he's looking at doing is putting another sign on the property. It's a elevated sign, it's an electronic sign. Typically, we've got those in town now with the different display messaging boards. And then what I put in my memo was that there's some conflicts with our municipal code. Number 1, the distance from the existing sign would be a conflict. And then also that the existing monument is in the right of way. And I will bring up the GIS real quick to kind of show the right-of-way property. And these lines are pretty close. I wouldn't say they're perfect, but they're pretty close. And you can see the existing sign right there is actually in the right of way, which is also a conflict of the municipal code right now. So
If we grant that variance, is the city liable in any way if there would be an accident in that road right away? And we approve that as a variance when it's not a standard?
it's a
And
great question.
would we also be subject to any other business that would want to put
I
a
agree.
sign in the road right away that we would have to grant that variance also? Would we be setting a standard for that?
Those are 2 very good questions. Number 1, I think we'd have to go to attorney to talk about the liability. But then number 2, it is more challenging if you grant one, you're setting a precedence. You know, obviously everything is on a case-by-case basis,
Right.
but
And that one,
Fall on.
and that one might have been put in without planning commission's permission also.
This one's been there for over 20 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it probably was never approved by anybody. They just put it in.
What I'm gathering is that the ordinance came about, that the right-of-way ordinance came about after that was already there, and nobody was aware of that there was a issue with it until he brought forth trying to put up the second sign.
Yeah.
So, and then that's when it dawned, you know, that it's out of compliance. So that's why he's bringing it here, since it's been there for the 20 years, hasn't been an issue. And that's where he's with that sign there, rather than tearing it down, which the cost of moving it is going to be way more than removing it altogether.
Okay, a couple of things.
Brian, why don't you come
Yeah.
up, come up to a microphone, if you
Oh,
don't
I'm
mind?
sorry.
You can just come up to the side.
Is this one okay?
That is perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, first of all, we're proposing to move the sign even further on our property to the other side of that small cement thing that you see there. We may have to cut down that tree. I don't like that, but we may have to do that. As I understand the ordinance, and I'll stand corrected, is that it's 200 feet between signs, and this will be 16 feet short if we move it to the other side. So it's not, you know, I understand not wanting to have a sign, you know, all the way along. I wouldn't want to live in a community like that. as far as moving the sign, I didn't ask them for a price moving it. My experience is that's what I would really rather do than destroy it. But just to destroy it will cost $1,300 more. And it really hasn't been a problem. I don't think anybody's complained about it. There is quite a bit of distance that if somebody misses a curve, they're not going to go smacking into it right away. We've never had an accident. I know tomorrow could be a different story. Okay. I guess what I'd like to say about it is personally, just the way I look at things in life, I don't like to destroy things that are working. And it is functioning. I renovated a little bit more for the plastic signs, and it does work. The problem we have is, and I'll go through, is why it isn't adequate. But I would like to point out that this sign was put in long before I think even the ordinance was noted. We were never notified up until this point that we were in violation of any ordinance. And like I said, it would probably cost double or triple what they want to destroy something to remove it more onto my property. The second point I would like to make is, and again, that's going to be about 14, 15 feet if we put it on the other side, and that's really what I'm proposing today, is that it's sort of a difficult thing. The hospital is merged with ThedaCare. Hospitals were given a little, maybe more leeway than usual, but we're competing with them as a business. I'll just be rather bluntly honest with you. And they have 15 signs when you include the ones on the building, the parking lot, and everything else. And we're restricted to one sign. And you notice I don't have any sign on my building per se. I'm sure there's a little glass stencil putting our hours and stuff, that's barely seeable from the road. You couldn't even see it from the parking lot until you get up there. So that's one thing I wanted to point out to you. The other thing is somebody in putting out said Evergreen is not a major road because it's only 2 blocks long. And I don't doubt that it's only 2 blocks long, but it has 3 medical clinics, if you include mine, if you include ThedaCare, and then the Affinity Clinic and or Ascension. I'm not sure what name they change to all the time. I don't mean to be funny about that, but it's gone through a lot of names. And in addition, they got the hospital right there. We have ambulances going down that thing. To describe it as not a main road is sort of, how big do you have to be a main road? It's highly trafficable. The other thing, and this is why we want the sign, we have a hard time communicating with the community in general, but even our own patients when we do something new in our office. If you put up a new sign, yeah, they see that. But if we do something new inside, they don't see that, even there. We're doing now, and I think, it's going to expand with other people, and I have no idea what my competition does, but we're doing, for example, COVID test in the building. It takes 15 minutes. We actually meet the people out in the parking lot. And what's good about it, what was happening a few months ago to everybody, including us, we're waiting 1 day, 2 days, maybe even a week for a test result. And what if you've got something else other than COVID? And plus, if you are got COVID, at least we can go out and then let people know that you have COVID so that we're not doing the trace study, but we're telling people to notify other people and so on. So just as an example that happened Monday, I had somebody come in on actually Tuesday, came in and said, I've been sick. I just got notified 3 days ago I had a COVID test. Turned out it was negative, but he had other problems and he was suffering from them during that time. So even if we just communicate with our own patients a little better, I think from our standpoint, the sign is worth it. I've been practiced nearly 30 years in this community. There isn't a lot of volume for expansion. It's more a communication of what we're doing differently, and oftentimes to let our own patients know. And yes, if there's some people that want to be seen, we could fit a few more in, but it isn't designed to really drag in a ton of business. It's to let them know what we're doing differently. You throw up a new building, everybody notices. If you throw up a new sign, eventually people aren't going to fade it out. But if the message is changing, I'm hoping that at least our own patients are paying attention to. With the things like COVID, I'm going to be looking tonight on doing vaccinations in the office when they become available. How difficult is that going to be to do? What equipment do we have to get? How do we sign up for it? If we are giving vaccines, we'd like the community to know about it. I would be honest with you, I'd be more than happy to hear that my colleagues from the 2 other clinics are handing out the vaccines as well. But we just want people to sort of have this communication. I tried the web, people pay attention to it, but it does a lot of updating, and it's hard to get that necessarily changed in a quick enough fashion. So I think it really would be beneficial to the community, to at least our patients and maybe a few more. And I think it's worth the variation of the 2 suggestions, leaving the one sign where it's at, moving the other sign, not on the picture you've got there, but on the other side where it's only 14 feet from, just be on that other side of the thing. Yeah, right about there, somewhere between there and there. And it'll be only about, I'm told by the people who are putting up the sign, 14 feet less than your city thing. Otherwise, and I'm not sure the guys want to sell it or want to sell it to me, I have to buy a lot of more, 14 feet, probably more than that, and a property. And since I just got the building paid off, I'd sort of like not to go back to the bank again right away. So that's my spiel on it, I guess.
I don't have a big concern with the new sign and the placement of it. I guess I have more concern with the old sign just because I have a little experience in the road right away. And I know that if the DOT would request me to remove any poles, that's a cost that I have to do. I cannot contest that. And I do know that with the bypass project. So if the DOT would ask you to move that sign, you would not be able to contest that being in the road right
I mean,
away.
the county or is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
My view is if somebody comes in there and says, I'll give you an example. Let's say we're going to do a circle there, okay? And you say, well, this is right away, you can't stop it and so on, et cetera. That's fine. But, to actually sit there and destroy the sign and then 10 years later, there's no reason why anybody had to use that doesn't seem, it seems like we're doing it just then for the ordinance person, not for a valid use.
Mhm.
Okay?
I would be concerned though, as far as the liability, if the city would be liable for any kind of an accident on, Mill Street or,
I mean,
that's a pretty active
Yeah.
corner there because a Quick Trip is being right across. I mean, you could see
You're curious that we'd be liable because we gave the variance?
correct.
well, because that's in the right of way.
The city would be granting some sort of liability because we allowed that.
Okay.
Chad, how accurate is that map? Because you look across the street, that utility pole is much closer than his sign to the road.
Mhm. We're allowed in the road right away though.
Okay.
But if they would request us to move, if the DOT would come and say your utility pole needs to be moved, we're going to extend that road. I can't even charge the DOT to do that. I have to incur that entire cost to move my facilities because it's in a road right away.
Okay.
Right.
But look how narrow the right of way is on that side. Yeah, where the arrow
Yeah,
is.
you've
versus
taken a
his
big
side.
chunk of my
Which-
real estate, and I don't know why that is.
Which the doctor would be on the hook too for the cost too, if they were to come in and say they need
That's
that
what I'm
right away.
saying.
Yeah,
Either way, so-
Anytime, if they
yeah.
would want to upgrade that corner,
Yeah.
you'd incur that cost. There wouldn't really be a
Well, I'm
dispute about
wondering
that.
why, no offense, but why there is, as you point out, so much right away on my side of the property and very little right away.
That may be
on
because
my
you're
neighbors.
You're on that inside of that corner where the car's got to be able to see down
And
the
if they
road.
make a turn lane there, they would require that to be upgraded at any point.
I mean, the only way we're gonna find the exact one is get a surveyor in there and put those survey marks in. That's the only way. I mean, this is the best we've got without actually doing that survey work.
Well, all I know is for 21 years, nobody has really worried about this. It was probably built before the ordinance was
I
involved.
agree with you on that.
And, and like I said, there was something that we were supposed to be notified and given 5 years to do it? What if we compromise that I'm given 5 years to move that sign at this point, or earlier, 3 months, 2 months for earlier from 5 years?
I would, I would like to see the liability factor if that's what everybody's interested in, then grant full variance. I mean, if that's the case, if we're not liable for that, if we grant the variance, and because it's his sign on his property, I don't see why we couldn't give him a variance. I mean, I'd like, what I'm saying though is I would like to really try hard for a business to stay intact and keep moving forward, you know, instead of hindering them.
Mhm.
If he wasn't trying to advance his business, we wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, and I have no problem with the new sign or the placement.
Is there a ordinance on how far on the new sign has to be from the property line?
Yeah,
What is that?
5 feet.
5
I gotta
feet?
take a phone call.
Right here,
Yep, 5 feet.
5 feet.
Where that's been there that long, we've never had any issues with it.
Correct.
Yeah, you know,
But now it's been brought to our attention, and now if there's an accident, we knew about it and we
Yeah.
granted the variance. Therefore, we would probably accept some sort of responsibility because we granted it, so we would allow it. That would be my only concern.
and I'm sure there's probably
Somebody hits the
10
light.
10 more of them around town that are just like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure,
We have to look at them
I'm
all.
sure of that. So then, are you gonna look at them all because you could be on the hook for every one of them?
Yep.
That would be something I would want the city to look into then, definitely.
Yeah, because I think.
Well, yeah, it is sort of unfair to.
You wouldn't be
single
on the
out
hook
one
unless you,
business, whether it's
unless
mine or
you
somebody
knew about
else.
it and granted the variance.
100%.
Is Quick Trip sign okay? Well, while you have that up there, I mean, I'd be curious to know if
There's his back a ways.
If you look at the shadows, I'm thinking it's probably right there somewhere.
even there, look how much less land Quick Trip loses to the roadway versus the hospital. It seems like that might be off a little bit, and I don't know how many feet it is, your existing sign is.
So I guess I'll make several suggestions. Number one, I can talk to Earl, our city attorney, to see what the liability is of the sign. Number two, I can see if there's a CSM done on this property. That might help us find exactly where the property lines are. I don't know if a CSM has been done on this property or not. I can look at that, whether this line is, does it go right in the middle of the sign? Is this supposed to be, are the lines a little off? I don't know.
Okay, well, could I ask, you can look into all that and I can see why you want to do it. But is there any way I can get at least an agreement for the variation on the second sign being across the driveway and only 15 feet, so I can at least get braking on that this winter? And then I guess we'll have to see in communication about what we're going to do with the second sign. But like I said, okay, I grew up in a town that was 10 miles away from, they had a 5-way stop and they had a big plastic cement cow in the middle of it. At a certain point, the drivers, if they're that far off the road, whose liability is that? I mean, if I was, even whether drunk or sober, and hit that sign myself, I don't see you guys being liable. I see the driver being liable. I don't know I don't know what scenario you guys are thinking of where somebody's going to be that far off the road and hit my sign and not be responsible themselves.
I don't think it really is the specifics about it. I think what it is the legality of it. And we surely don't want the city to be under any kind of,
I think the law is the law, and there's a
Right.
reason that there isn't it's
Right.
written in here for a reason for the sign not to be in the right of way, and that's what I want to know before I make a decision, is I would like, and it doesn't cost us anything to get more information on it, So rather than jump to a quick judgment, I'm not saying I'm opposed to granting your variance
Right.
at all. I just want somebody to tell me it's okay
Right.
as far
And I
as the
also
city.
like it, I mean, I always think we need to always keep in mind that once we grant a variance, then down the road, we would have
We're s-
another variance.
Right, we're
And,
setting
we're
a precedent.
setting a precedent. And so if it is a reason for having that, we need to explore why we have it.
Could I throw another curveball at you then? Let's say you enforce that you don't want to give this variance, you want to move it back or destroy the sign or whatever we have to do. Would it be legally unquestionable for me to ask to go around town and say, this is, this is in somebody else's right of way, and why aren't you moving this sign or that sign or the other sign?
And we understand that, but
So the other thing is, if you're going to enforce this rule here and you don't want to give a variance, okay. But then I would expect that you would go around and check everybody else's thing too. And I think you're going to piss off a lot of businesses, okay, for what they will perceive, which is what I'm perceiving, is no tangible good reason.
I'm sure that he would have had to come in and get permission for that sign. So it's, and then we come along later and change the rules. Would we not have granted, would have grandfathered some of those that were existing?
Probably not that long ago. They might have just put the sign in there and never asked anybody to do it. Just put it in there.
And I will be honest with you, the people who make the sign at that time have been out of business for a decade. So I can't go to them and ask,
Yeah.
who'd you get permission from? Did you check the ordinance?
Who sets the right-of-way lines?
They're pretty much set from years ago for,
I mean, is that a DOT thing or is that a city thing or what?
so for example, for the new development over by the high school, I mean, when they plotted, when you do the plot, or the plat, I mean, that's creating all that information. So there's CSMs done, on the lots, and that's all determined when this is all developed. So that's been,
Well, there must be measurements though that, I mean, like this needs to be so many feet or,
Yep.
I mean, who sets the measurements?
and like I said, the easiest, the most official way is to get a surveyor to come out and plot
Right,
things.
right. But I'm just wondering who has that authority over them right-of-way lines? Like whose lines are them?
Well, the right away is governmental lines. I mean, it's set the right of way for the road.
Maybe the county. The county would be,
That one is probably
That's probably state.
DOT.
it might have been because that was State Highway 45 at one time, so
Yeah.
that could have been
State
the
right-of-way.
DOT.
Yeah.
Now it's a county
That's what
road
I was
now.
just thinking, looking at, that's why I was asking that, because looking at them lines, even on Evergreen there, boy, that's half their yard.
Yeah.
And, because maybe it was because 45 was there or whatever, and do them lines need to be updated? Maybe them lines need to be moved out.
Doctor, did you have a certified survey map done of the property?
That's a
Description
good
of the
question,
property?
and I think I did, because my father had problems not without having a certified thing. I have to, you're talking about 30 years ago. I'm trying to even remember who I bought it from, the land, to be honest with you. Just so many years have gone by. But I think I would have, because the bottom line with it is my father had run into just not getting a certified thing, and I would have done that. But I can check into it, but it's like, yeah.
So what I'm gathering is the main concern is the city's liability, correct?
Yeah.
correct.
And we can get that answered through Earl.
Yep.
So my suggestion is we table that sign until our next meeting and get further information from our attorney and discuss the variance if that sign were to stay, discussed a variance so the doctor can either scrub his plans or move forward with the second sign. I mean, if it comes back that we're liable in our next meeting, we don't, or we make them remove it, or we don't give the variance,
I
then the
guess
sign's no
I
big
would not
deal,
like
but
to grant a variance on a sign if it was put in illegally. We can look into that also. You know, we can find out if this sign was, if we had this ordinance in place, we can get a little bit more clarity.
Mhm.
I don't want two wrongs to make a right
Mhm.
so I think we just need more information on that. I mean, I don't,
Is there any way we can build the second sign though?
that's,
yes.
yeah,
right
that's what I'm
now.
saying. No, we would, basically what we'd have to do today is grant the variance with that existing sign as it is
Right.
and continue and table that,
That first sign.
the original sign
Yeah, okay.
for the next,
Doctor,
Meeting.
is that sign lit? I drive by it 100 times, but
Yeah, it is lit at night. We don't, it's actually set up now. Used to have a timer, which was not too good. It's set up now so that all the lights on the buildings outside go out when it's dark. So if you have a really dark day, you'll see it, but it's virtually only lit up at night.
so I'll make a motion.
Here, I'll make the suggestion first.
Okay.
So, number one, I'll make the suggestion that you grant the variance to allow the distance between the two signs.
Mhm.
So that's the variance that you're granting, which allows them to put the second sign in.
Correct.
You're gonna table the second variance to consider allowing the existing sign to stay in, because that was the second variance. But in the meantime, I'm gonna research, number one, the liability of it with the city attorney. Number two, we'll see if there's a CSM, because, you know, we're basing this information off the county maps. This is coming from the county maps. If those lines are wrong, that second line, you know, maybe the sign, maybe the sign's in,
We very well
outside the
may
right of way.
not be
If
talking.
you look at
about
that
this.
house right there, I
Yeah.
mean, he's technically over the lot line too, the one, the second property over, I guess yeah. That line
Well-
goes right through his house.
But you
so-
gotta, with the mapping, you gotta look at the bottom of the house, not the top of the house, because it's skewed. So you gotta look at this bottom where the bottom of the house hits,
Okay,
and that's your distance
It
down
also
here.
depends on the last survey. I actually
Yes.
own the house next to that one and those lot lines. It goes off of the last certified survey. So if you own the first house and you survey it and they go from the first point over this way, you would own 6 inches of the neighbor's property. And if you survey it from the other,
Talking the apartment
stake.
building next door, or are you talking
the
about?
next one over, but
he's looking at that.
One to the
technically,
left.
I guess if you look at the bottom of the
House right here.
house,
Yeah.
it's probably
He
okay.
he was saying that this house is in
Yeah.
the right away,
by
but
4 feet.
the
maybe.
picture's skewed.
No,
That's
but
an
I'm
aerial-
seeing the
You got an
line
aerial
go-
view. You're
You gotta
looking
look
at
the
an
bottom of
aerial
the
view.
house to look at
Oh,
it.
there's a
This one's
vertical
this
one.
one, the house.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. I'm
And I own that property right there. And those properties, it depended on which way you surveyed it. So you could fight with the neighbor as long as you wanted. And it would depend on who had the last certified survey of who owned part of the driveway
Right.
and who didn't.
And where
Because
they
it's,
started the
yeah,
survey
if you
from.
survey it from this way, which that homeowner would do for his benefit, and the other homeowner would do for his benefit, it's not a perfect world. So there was a 2-foot variance in which one you certified it from for the survey. And
Seems
it
like
was
a-
just whichever one was done
I
last.
guess just
took
looking
precedent.
at the map, it seems like, you know, you're taking, no, I know, a big easement on my property and not very much across the road. And I don't know why that would be. You
Well,
know,
and the easement and the right of way distance is probably correct. It's a matter, was the road put right down the middle of the right of way? I mean,
Yeah,
did they put this
okay.
road right down the middle, or did they skew it to one side in their right of way for whatever reason? So that's another consideration. So
Lean on
I think
that
number
side.
one, like we said, we'll verify that that sign is in or out of the right of way. We're looking
Okay.
at this as our current information. Let's take it to the next step, see if a CSM is done.
Right.
You know, if we got to get a surveyor to actually put the points in the ground, then
I think it's not going to take very much to get some clarity on this.
Yep.
okay.
I don't see you
And
moving your
it's
sign.
very
honestly.
possible that that right of way is
think
smaller
it's
now,
gonna be
that
an
that's
issue.
not a state highway.
well, the right of way would stay the same. I
It
don't
would.
think they would change that.
Okay.
You know, but let's verify these lines are correct. But number one, I'll recommend that you guys allow at least the variance for the distance to allow him to keep on going and install the second sign.
what would happen if you'd have to actually move that original sign? And then, would you put that sign back in place, or would you just do away with that sign?
Well, it's just like anything else, although it might have some sentimental attachment to it. We'd have to, this is what, it's not anything with you guys here, but this is the way our society works now. It's easier to destroy stuff than to save it. Okay? So I got a suspicion that they didn't quote me on saving it because that probably is going to cost more. And to get somebody, and it's just really sort of not upset at you guys, not upset, but it just irks me whenever I have to destroy something that is still functioning because of some reason somewhat like this, and it's sort of,
That's what we do in America.
yeah, it just irks me when we destroy stuff that is still functioning. If it wasn't functioning, if the light was thing, if the bricks were all crap, I would be the first to say, let's pull it out of there. Okay. And, when the trees started giving me problems, I love those trees, but we ended up getting one cut down because it was on somebody's easement. Somebody thought it would fall and knock off the wires at the hospital. And my view on that was, don't they have a spare generator? Just for that reason. And, the other one just cracked because of winter problems and a storm. And so we had to destroy that one too. And like I said, I'd like to put some trees around there, but I guess with the easements the way they are, I don't think I'm going to put any more on that side of the sidewalk for the cement and the thing. So as I understand, I can go ahead with the second sign, but we're going to have to chair or table till we get more information.
We have to vote on.
We'll make,
Have to
You want to
vote
make
on
that,
it.
you want to make that motion?
we'll
Mark?
make that motion to grant the variance of the new sign distance. And we'll table the existing sign for further information to our next meeting.
I have a second.
I'll
Where's
second it.
what's your first choice for the sign? By the shed over there or on the other
I
side?
think I at this point would just to do it on the shed sign. There is some technical thing. They said that, well, this is a thing too. They said they could run electricity from the original sign and run it down to the new sign. But they can also run electricity from the shed area too. And I guess at this point, if you're talking about that, I'd rather just keep it on the second side. If you had my preference in the beginning, I'd probably say closer, but I guess I'd rather be further down the road at this point.
Right there.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we
I'm
got,
told that second site by the people that are putting the sign is about 15 feet less than the 200 feet. You were
Yeah.
talking.
I guess we got a motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, I don't know.
So we'll follow up with you throughout the month and we'll get our stuff and we'll just work together on what we need to figure out.
Straighten it out, I guess. Thank you very much for all your time and effort.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks.
Thank you, Doctor.
Got update on any planning issues, the other agenda items, Chad?
The only thing I was gonna talk about, did I mention the Jim Rickman over by?
I mentioned it to me, yeah.
I did go check out that property and what happened, and I did talk to him this last week. So Jim went ahead and widened his driveway to a point that is between his existing driveway and the existing driveway was a asphalt driveway. And he added on a gravel driveway. Now the entire thing is over 70 feet long. And the ordinance calls for, I believe off the top of my head, a 20-foot 5 width at the property line, and then it can flare out 4 feet either side. So you could have like around 28 feet total. So he's at 71, or he's at 70, so he's got quite a bit longer. Didn't get any type of permits to do that, number 2. Number 3, he modified the public utility there, which is the storm sewer inlet. And the storm sewer inlet collects rainwater and puts it in the culvert across the street and then dumps it on the west side of Wood Lane Drive. What he did was he built up around it. So he kind of took the swale or ditch out of the picture. And then he put basically, it looks like a pallet, but it's like 4x4.
Yeah,
Piece of
it's
wood.
boards.
Yep. Did you go check it out?
I looked at it, yeah, it's boards.
So I called him and I said, all right, Jim, number one, we didn't receive an application or a permit or granted a permit for widening your driveway. Number two, the driveway is much wider than what the ordinance calls for. Number three, there was no permit or permission authorization given to modify the public utility. And number four, you modified it in a way that's not compliant with any type of standards for a storm sewer inlet. So in his conversation was he wanted to talk about whether he could just, put grass where the new driveway was. But I think what his main goal is to try to keep that inlet up because they don't want to see that when the river comes up, it backs up on the backside in that swampy area and then it comes back through that culvert and comes up in his driveway. And he wants to build it up so he doesn't do that. And I said, I am not going to give permission right now to authorize us to build this up without engineering because those culverts were put there to collect rainwater. And if we get a 2-inch, rain event in a half an hour, where's that rainwater going to go? And if I arbitrarily, without an engineering degree, just say it's okay to raise it up and, supersede what that was designed to do, and that rainwater doesn't have anywhere to go and floods out the neighbors, we're liable. So I said, the only way we're going to be able to modify that is if there's engineering done. And if you want that done, well, you're going to have to pay for it. He was receptive to that. So I'm going to contact McMahon and see what it's going to cost to engineer to either verify that that can be done or, engineer it in a way that makes it safe and the liability is not put on us for modifying that inlet. So that's where we're at with things right now.
That inlet is in a roadway?
The inlet is in the ditch right there. It's a culvert, storm sewer inlet culvert.
I was just wondering if it was designed to end up in his yard, like, is that normal?
It's in the right of way.
Yeah,
It's right off the road there. Like,
Just off the driveway.
It's in the ditch.
The crown of the road, all the water that comes down is supposed to go to the other side, so it doesn't affect the houses.
Jim Rickman was in here to the Plan Commission for something.
Purchasing land. He was gonna divide the lot that was between he and his neighbor. They were gonna divide it.
Okay.
And the neighbor was gonna take half and that went through.
Yeah.
So somewhere in this area, it's just showing as a inlet, but there's a culvert that goes across the street and then it dumps into the swampy area over here. And what he did was he basically put gravel across this whole area right here. And this inlet is sitting in here somewhere. And he basically raised up the whole area and then, put that pallet over the top. Well, this inlet obviously is designed to collect the rainwater in this area. And I think he built up the back of his property too, if that's not what he was in here for. So the question is, if you get a big rain event, where's this water going to go? Because obviously inlet needs to be at the lowest point for collection purposes.
I'm surprised he just had wood over it. You're driving over it.
Yeah, and I told him that's not a standard.
No, and I saw that. I thought, boy, I don't know what he's thinking.
And I warned him there might be some citations for doing all this without permission. So we're looking into that as well. So the only other thing I was going to report on is the full-time building inspector position. The building inspector obviously reports to this commission quite often. That position is posted right now, and we are accepting applications until November 30th. So we'll see what applications we get, and we'll start the interview process and hiring process and go from there.
Good, sooner the better.
And that's all I got.
Anybody else have anything? Like a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn, all in favor?
Full motion, sorry.
I'll motion.
Okay, what?
Jay, second?
Second.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.